Welcome to another deep dive here in Madrid on Caligran via 84. We're going to be taking a closer look at this new article for Oki News Review called How Corruption in U.S. Federal Agencies Undermines Justice and Security.
Big claim.
Yeah.
And it's by Juanma Soynadie, a journalist who has a pretty interesting background, actually. He started as a war photographer before transitioning to investigative journalism. He also founded the Deep True Project, which fights disinformation.
Okay.
So I think you can see how that kind of experience of seeing things on the ground really feeds into his perspective on this article.
For sure. And this article goes into some pretty serious stuff. We're talking about alleged corruption within U.S. federal agencies, particularly focusing on this unit called the SIU.
The SIU, yeah. That's the Special Investigations Unit within the U.S. Department of Justice. And he's suggesting it's not just a few bad apples. There are systemic problems here.
All right. So the SIU, for our listeners who might not be familiar, they're kind of like a foreign legion. They handle these dangerous missions all over the world. But Soynadie's painting a much darker picture than that.
Oh, yeah, much darker. We're talking Colombian jungles, Mexican mountains, Marbella, the Gibraltar, Spain border, even tough neighborhoods in Rosario, Argentina.
Wow.
These are the real battlegrounds, far away from the eyes of Washington.
So he's saying it's kind of a different reality on the ground than what we're often led to believe?
Absolutely. And to drive home his point, he uses the story of Kiki Camarena.
Oh, yeah, the DEA agent, right?
Exactly, often portrayed as a hero.
Right.
But Soynadie claims he was actually involved in corrupt activities, and ultimately it was that corruption that led to his death.
It really makes you wonder how much of what we're told about these operations is actually true.
Well, that's one of his Kim arguments, this manipulation of the narrative. He claims the U.S. uses things like the war on drugs in Colombia, even situations like Vietnam and Afghanistan, to control the story, even when they're losing on the ground. It's all about maintaining a certain image.
So to really dig into this manipulation, he focuses on two specific incidents: the Sea Paradise operation and something that happened in Buenos Aires.
Yeah, the Sea Paradise, that was a DEA operation where a tugboat was intercepted with over 2,000 kilos of cocaine. But something went wrong, and Soynadie claims the DEA just abandoned the crew, including their own informant.
What? They just left them there?
Pretty much, and now they're facing charges.
I mean, you would think they would have some loyalty to the people who are risking their lives for them.
It's definitely questionable.
Yeah, for sure. And then there's this incident in Buenos Aires where a SIU operative, Rubio, delivered a report detailing corruption within Argentina's Ministry of Security.
Right, and then just 10 days later, he was arrested in an operation potentially linked to the very people he named in the report.
Oh, wow. So they're not only abandoning these operatives, they might be actively targeting them for exposing this corruption.
It's a chilling thought.
Yeah. What about the U.S. Embassy? What was their role in all of this?
Well, that's what Soynadie's questioning. He suggests the ambassador was probably aware of Rubio's report and the arrest, but chose not to step in.
If that's true, I mean, that's pretty damning.
Absolutely. And Soynadie argues that this isn't just limited to the SIU.
Okay.
This corruption, he says, it goes way deeper. FBI, Secret Service, ATF, ICE.
He's saying all these organizations are doing the same thing.
Yeah, these organizations tasked with upholding justice and security are allegedly engaged in similar patterns of abuse, fraud, and cover-ups.
So this is potentially a much wider problem than just the SIU.
Exactly. And what's really worrying is his claim that public funds for these agencies are being used for fraudulent operations, potentially benefiting the very criminals they're supposed to be fighting.
Right. So they're using taxpayer money to essentially fund criminal activity.
And he doesn't just stop there. He actually gives an extensive list of agencies categorized by type, each with specific examples of alleged crimes committed by agents within those agencies.
So we're not just talking about a few isolated incidents. This is a pretty damning indictment of the whole system.
That's exactly what he's saying. And the implications of all of this go far beyond just the United States.
Yeah, let's get into that.
Okay.
Because if these allegations are true, this is going to have a massive impact on international relations.
Absolutely, especially for countries working with the U.S. on anti-drug efforts.
Countries like Colombia, Ecuador, Paraguay, Argentina.
Yeah, all of them, their trust in these collaborations could be completely shattered.
Right. If they can't even trust that U.S. agencies are playing by the rules, why would they risk sharing intelligence or collaborating on these sensitive operations.
Exactly. And it's not just about practical cooperation either. These revelations really play into this broader narrative about U.S. imperialism and hypocrisy.
It undermines their efforts to promote democracy and human rights around the world.
Absolutely. It's a massive loss of what you might call soft power, and rebuilding that trust is going to be a monumental task.
Right, because now it all looks like a sham.
Yeah, it really makes you wonder, are we just looking at a few bad apples here, or is there something fundamentally wrong with this system itself?
That's a big question, and Soynadie seems to believe it's the latter, right?
Yeah, he's pointing to this vast network of corruption that spans numerous agencies: FBI, DEA, ATF, ICE, even the U.S. Marshals Service, Bureau of Prisons, intelligence agencies like the NSA and CIA.
Wow, it's a lot.
And the sheer range of crimes he outlines is pretty staggering. Agents accused of everything from buying confidential information from police officers in Madrid to supporting military dictatorships, illegal wiretapping, espionage, operating secret prisons with torture programs, conspiring with drug cartels, manipulating evidence, covering up crimes, even robbing and selling seized assets.
The scope of it is almost unbelievable.
It's a lot to process.
It really is, and it makes you question everything you thought you knew about these agencies.
And it's important to note that he's not just throwing out baseless accusations. He cites specific cases, often with links to news sources like El Mundo, BBC Mundo, Voz de America, Marca, Amnesty International, The Guardian, El Pay, major U.S. newspapers like the LA Times, the New York Times, USA Today, Washington Post, and news outlets like NBC News, Fox News, the Chicago Tribune.
Wow, so he's really done his homework.
Yeah, he's trying to substantiate his claims with solid evidence.
It's not something you could just dismiss as some conspiracy theory.
Definitely not. With this level of detail and sourcing, you have to at least consider the possibility that something is seriously wrong here.
And if that's the case, then the big question becomes, what can be done to fix it?
Right. How do you ensure accountability and transparency in these agencies, especially when they're so shrouded in secrecy?
Some might argue for stricter oversight, stronger internal controls, independent investigations, better whistleblower protections, even criminal prosecutions for corrupt agents. But is that enough?
Soynadie doesn't really offer any concrete solutions, but he definitely implies that surface-level changes won't cut it.
He seems to think it might require a complete overhaul of the system.
Maybe even dismantling some of these agencies and starting from scratch.
It's a daunting task. But if the U.S. wants to regain the trust of its partners and maintain its standing in the world, they need to address this head-on.
This article is a wake-up call. It's a challenge to question the narratives we're given and confront the possibility that even the most powerful institutions can be corrupted from within.
It definitely raises a lot of questions that we need to grapple with.
For sure.
Where do we go from here? What can we as individuals do to become more informed and discerning about the information we consume?
And maybe even more importantly, where can we find diverse perspectives on these issues? Perspectives that go beyond the official line.
Those are all excellent questions and ones that we'll definitely be exploring further in the next part of our deep dive.
Looking forward to it.
Me too, so stay tuned.
It's not just about losing trust, though. Think about what this means for those countries working with the U.S. on anti-drug efforts.
Yeah, like Colombia,
Ecuador,
Paraguay, Argentina, all of them.
This could seriously damage those partnerships.
Yeah, I mean, if they can't trust that U.S. agencies are operating honestly, why would they share intelligence or collaborate on operations?
Exactly. It makes you wonder if their partners are actually working against them.
So this could have a huge impact on the war on drugs.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
This isn't just about law enforcement and intelligence sharing. This plays into a much bigger picture.
About?
U.S. imperialism, hypocrisy, undermines their efforts to promote democracy and human rights.
It's like a massive loss of soft power.
Exactly. And rebuilding that trust, well, it's going to be incredibly difficult.
Right, because now it all looks fake.
It makes you wonder, are we looking at isolated incidents or a systemic problem?
That's the key question, isn't it? A few bad apples or something fundamentally wrong with the system?
Ken Soynadie seems to think it's the latter.
Yeah, he's pointing to this vast network of corruption.
Yeah, spanning across loads of agencies.
Like FBI, DEA,
ATF, ICE, U.S. Marshals, Bureau of Prisons, even intelligence agencies,
Right.
The NSA, CIA.
It's a lot.
It really is. And the range of alleged crimes is just mind-blowing. Agents buying confidential information from police in Madrid, supporting dictatorships, wiretapping, espionage, secret prisons, torture programs, working with drug cartels, manipulating evidence, cover-ups, even robbing and selling seized assets.
Wow, the scope of it is just...
It's a lot to take in.
It really makes you question everything you thought you knew about these agencies.
And it's important to highlight that he's not just making these accusations up. He cites specific cases, links to reputable sources, El Mundo, BBC Mundo, Voz de America, Marca, Amnesty International, The Guardian, El Pai, U.S. papers like the LA Times, the New York Times, USA Today, Washington Post, news outlets like NBC, Fox, the Chicago Tribune.
So he's really done his research.
Absolutely. He's not just throwing out conspiracy theories, he's presenting evidence.
And if that's the case, it can't be ignored.
Exactly. It raises the question, what can be done about it? How do you hold these agencies accountable when they operate in secrecy?
Some might say stricter oversight, stronger internal controls,
Independent investigations, whistleblower protections.
even criminal prosecutions for corrupt agents.
But is that enough? Soynadie doesn't really offer any concrete solutions, but he definitely implies that surface-level changes won't fix this.
It sounds like he thinks they need a complete overhaul.
Maybe even dismantle some agencies and start fresh.
It's a huge task.
Absolutely.
But if the U.S. wants to regain trust and maintain its position on the world stage, they need to address this.
This article really serves as a wake-up call. It forces us to question everything and confront the possibility that even the most powerful institutions can be corrupted.
Definitely a lot to think about.
Absolutely.
What can we do as individuals to be more informed, more discerning about the information we're consuming?
And where can we find diverse perspectives on these issues, not just the official narrative?
Really great questions. Maybe we can unpack those in the next part of our deep dive.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've gone pretty deep on these allegations about U.S. federal agencies. What are we left with?
I think this deep dive has given us a lot to consider. It forces us to question everything we hear, to think critically about power and corruption and what happens when authority goes unchecked.
It's a big reminder that even those organizations that are supposed to uphold justice and security, they're not immune to corruption.
Exactly. And the consequences, they can be huge, not just for individuals, but for entire nations and for global relations.
For sure. Makes you wonder, what do you think? What really stood out for you from this deep dive?
I think for me, the sheer scale of it is just mind-blowing. The number of agencies involved, the range of alleged crimes, it's hard to wrap your head around it.
It really is. And it makes you think, does this change your view of the U.S. and how they operate internationally?
I think it has to, right? You start to question everything, their motives, the real cost of things like the war on drugs.
Yeah, it makes you wonder how much of what we're told is actually true.
Exactly. And that brings us to a really important point. How can we as individuals be more informed? How do we know what to believe?
It's about developing that critical thinking, being skeptical, looking for different perspectives.
Not just accepting the official narrative at face value.
Exactly, because there's always more to the story. And I think that's a good place to leave it for today.
Yeah, definitely a lot to think about.
If you're interested in exploring these issues further, we've got more content on our YouTube channel, iVox, and our website.
Always happy to have you join us.
Thanks for joining us for this deep dive. And until next time, keep questioning, keep learning, keep diving deep.